There are places where history breathes softly in the wind, where the voices of ancient lives still linger in stone and soil. Tonight, we follow a traveler who walks between worlds, carried not by maps or roads, but by dreams that bloom beneath cherry trees and temple bells. Each time he closes his eyes, the earth remembers, and time folds gently backward. In sleep, he finds doorways. A garden in modern Tokyo becomes an Edo courtyard lit by paper lanterns. A quiet street transforms into a merchant road where caravans once passed. The past is not gone. It waits, patient and luminous, for those willing to dream their way toward it. This is a journey measured not in miles, but in moments of stillness, in conversations with those who shaped empires, in lessons whispered by wind through ancient pines. Here, there is no urgency, no danger, only the slow unfolding of wisdom across centuries and the gentle discovery of what connects us all. So settle softly where you are. Let the day's noise fade like distant bells. Close your eyes and step quietly into the dream. The park was almost empty now, as the afternoon light began its slow, golden descent toward evening. Kenji sat with his back against the ancient cherry tree, feeling the rough bark through his thin jacket. A small, grounding sensation that reminded him he was real. He was here. He had made it this far. The graduation scroll lay across his lap, still crisp and formal in its ceremonial holder. He hadn't meant to come to this park. He'd simply started walking after the ceremony ended, after the photographs and the bows and the carefully practiced smiles, walking with no particular destination until his feet found this quiet place near the Sumida River, where the cherry trees grew in patient rows along the pathwater's edge. Pink petals drifted down in the soft spring air, landing on his coat sleeves, catching in his dark hair. One settled on the corner of his scroll, so delicate it barely seemed real. Kenji watched it rest there, trembling slightly in the breeze. For years of study, for years of research papers and late nights in library archives, of learning ancient scripts and modern journalism, of trying to weave together two paths that everyone said couldn't be walked at the same time. Archaeologist, journalist, his professors had smiled politely when he'd explained his dream. To travel, to uncover stories buried in soil and stone, to write about the past in ways that made it breathe for people in the present. Choose one, they'd said gently, as if advising him away from a childish fantasy. Focus, specialize, be practical. But he had graduated with both, somehow, and now the scroll sat heavy on his lap, an official testament to completion, and all he felt was the strange emptiness of not knowing what came next. The river murmured nearby, a soft, continuous whisper beneath the distant hum of Tokyo traffic. Somewhere beyond the park's border, trains moved through stations. People hurried toward appointments. The great city machinery turned and turned. But here, in this pocket of stillness, time seemed to pause. The cherry blossoms fell like snow that didn't melt, accumulating in gentle drifts along the path, catching in the fresh spring grass. Kenji reached into his backpack and pulled out one of his notebooks, the oldest one, its edges worn soft from years of handling. He opened it to a random page and saw his own handwriting from 3 years ago. What if we could walk where they walked? What if we could ask them directly? The people who built these temples, who wrote these poems, who shaped this world. He smiled, but it was a tired smile. The dreams of a younger version of himself, written when everything still felt possible. when the future was a vast, unexplored country full of promise. Now that country had arrived, and he stood at its border without a map. What did he want? Really want? To understand, he supposed. To connect. To find the places where history wasn't just dates and artifacts but breathing moments, human moments. To tell stories that mattered. But how did you begin something like that? How did you take the first step when you couldn't see the path? A breeze moved through the cherry branches, and a fresh cascade of petals spiraled down. They caught the slanting sunlight, turning from pink to gold to white as they fell, each one a small, perfect thing in motion. Kenji watched them dance and settle, and felt something in his chest a knot slightly. Just a little, just enough to breathe more deeply. His mother had told him years ago when he was small that cherry blossoms teach a gentle lesson. They bloom for such a short time, she'd said, just a week or two each year. And in that brief window, they're more beautiful than almost anything else in the world. Then they fall. But that's not sad, she had told him, brushing petals from his child-sized shoulders. That's just how beautiful things happen. Slowly, in their own time, and then they change into something new. Kenji leaned his head back against the tree, letting his eyes drift closed for just a moment. The sounds of the park settled around him like a soft blanket. The river's murmur, the rustle of leaves, the distant, gentle percussion of the city beyond. Someone laughed, far away. A bicycle bell chimed. A bird called from the branches above. A clear, falling note that seemed to ring in the growing stillness. The warmth of the afternoon was fading now, giving way to the cooler touch of early evening. The air smelled of earth and water and the sweet, subtle fragrance of cherry blossoms. Kenji felt the tension in his shoulders begin to melt, felt his breathing slow and deepen. The scroll slipped slightly on his lap. He should probably go home, should probably start making plans, sending applications, mapping out the practical steps of building a career. But not yet, not quite yet. Just a few more minutes of sitting here, beneath these trees, in this borrowed stillness. Another petal landed on his hand, so light he barely felt it. Pink as a whisper, soft as a question with no answer required. His eyes grew heavier. The sounds of the park seemed to soften further, as if someone were slowly turning down the volume of the world. The light filtering through the cherry branches took on a dreamlike quality, honeyed and gentle. And the petals that fell now seemed to fall in slow motion, tracing lazy spirals through the golden air. Kenji's breathing deepened. His hand, still resting on the old notebook, relaxed its grip. The scroll tilted slightly, held in place only by the weight of his arm. More petals fell. They caught in his hair, settled on his shoulders, accumulated in the folds of his jacket. Pink upon pink upon pink, like a blanket being drawn up slowly, tenderly, by invisible hands. The river's voice grew softer. The bird's call seemed to come from very far away now, or perhaps from very long ago. The boundaries between sound and silence began to blur, the way watercolors blur when the paper is still wet. Time itself seemed to slow. The tree at his back felt warmer somehow, as if it held centuries of sunlight in its wood and was sharing that accumulated warmth with him. The bark seemed to pulse very gently, like a slow heartbeat, or perhaps that was his own heart, slowing, settling, sinking with something older and deeper than his small, immediate worries. The light changed, not suddenly, but gradually, the way dawn changes or dusk. A soft transformation that you only notice once it's already begun. The golden afternoon glow deepened, richened, took on amber tones and russet shadows. The cherry blossoms falling around him seemed to shimmer slightly, as if each petal carried a tiny flame of light within it. Kenji felt himself drifting, the way you drift on water, held and carried by something greater than yourself. The boundary between waking and sleeping grew thin as silk, translucent, barely there. He could still hear the river, but now it seemed to speak in a different rhythm, an older cadence. The distant city sounds faded, became whispers, became wind. His last conscious thought was of cherry blossoms, and how strange it was that something so delicate could return year after year, century after century, always the same and always new. The petals kept falling. The light kept changing. And Kenji, beneath the ancient tree, surrounded by pink and gold and the soft breath of early evening, let his eyes close fully and slipped, gently, safely, like a boat sliding into calm water, into sleep. The world blurred at its edges. The sounds of modern Tokyo faded to nothing. The park itself seemed to shimmer and dissolve, like morning mist touched by sunlight. And in the space between one breath and the next, between one falling petal and another, time shifted. The dream began. Kenji opened his eyes to the sound of wind moving through cherry branches. For a moment, he simply lay there, feeling the same rough bark against his back, the same gentle pressure of earth beneath him. But something had changed. The quality of the air, perhaps. Or the light. Yes, definitely the light. It fell through the blossoms in a different way now, warmer and softer, as if filtered through aged paper or honey-colored glass. He sat up slowly, and his breath caught. The park was gone, or rather, it had transformed. The cherry trees remained, but they seemed older somehow, their trunks thicker, their branches spreading in patterns he didn't remember. The paved pathways had vanished, replaced by careful arrangements of gravel and stepping stones. Where modern street lamps had stood, wooden posts now rose from the ground, unlit paper lanterns swaying gently from their crossbeams. The river still murmured nearby, but its voice seemed clearer now, unobscured by the constant hum of traffic. Because there was no traffic, the ever-present drone of Tokyo, the trains, the cars, the electrical pulse of millions of people and machines, had simply disappeared, leaving behind a silence so profound that every small sound became distinct and precious. Kenji stood, his legs slightly unsteady. His modern clothes felt out of place, but when he looked down, he was surprised to find them unchanged. His jacket, his jeans, his worn sneakers. The graduation scroll was still clutched in his hand, though it seemed impossibly contemporary against the scene unfolding around him. He should have been afraid. That's what his rational mind suggested, quietly, from some distant corner of his consciousness. But fear wouldn't come. Instead, he felt a deep, resonant curiosity, the same feeling he'd had as a child when discovering a hidden pathway in a familiar garden, or opening a book that promised to carry him somewhere he'd never been. A scent drifted on the breeze, incense, but not the kind sold in modern shops. This was wood smoke and sandalwood and something floral he couldn't quite name, layered and complex, speaking of temples and ceremonies and careful ritual. It made him think of his grandmother's house, of summer afternoons spent in rooms where time moved differently. Footsteps approached on the gravel path, a distinctive sound, purposeful and measured. Kenji turned and saw a figure moving between the trees. A man, dressed in simple working clothes of indigo-dyed cotton, his hair tied back in a style Kenji had only seen in history books and period dramas. The man carried 2 wooden buckets suspended from a pole across his shoulders, and he walked with the steady rhythm of someone who had traveled this path 1,000 times before. The man nodded politely as he passed, his eyes registering Kenji's presence without surprise or concern. "Good evening," he said, and the words came in Japanese, but shaped differently than Kenji was used to. The vowels held longer, certain inflections rising where he expected them to fall. Old Japanese, Edo-period speech patterns, perhaps earlier. "Good evening," Kenji replied automatically, and was startled to hear his own voice adapt, matching the man's cadence without conscious thought. The man continued on his way, his footsteps fading into the soft orchestration of evening sounds. Wind in branches, water over stones, distant voices carrying on the cooling air. Kenji walked forward slowly, following the gravel path toward what he thought had once been the park's entrance. Cherry petals fell around him just as they had before, but their movement seemed more deliberate now, more choreographed, as if each blossom knew exactly where to land. They accumulated in the folds of his jacket, caught in his hair, dotted the path ahead like pink snow. The path curved, and suddenly he could see more of this transformed world. Buildings rose in the distance, not the steel and glass towers of Tokyo, but wooden structures with curved tile roofs, their designs elegant and economical. Smoke rose from several chimneys in thin, gray ribbons. Lanterns had been lit in some windows, their warm glow already visible in the deepening twilight. A woman passed by, moving with quiet grace, her kimono the color of moss and stone. She carried a basket covered with cloth, and her wooden sandals clicked softly against the stepping stones. She glanced at Kenji, her expression gentle and incurious, as if young men in strange clothing appeared in gardens every day. "The blossoms are beautiful this year," she offered, her archaic phrasing making the simple observation sound like poetry. "Yes," Kenji managed. "Very beautiful." She smiled and continued on, her silhouette growing fainter in the gathering dusk. This was a dream. It had to be, but it felt nothing like the dreams Kenji usually experienced. Those fragmented, illogical journeys where one moment bled into another without reason or continuity. This felt real. The air had weight and texture. The gravel beneath his feet shifted with each step, small stones pressing through the thin soles of his sneakers. When he reached out to touch a cherry tree's trunk, the bark was solid and rough, deeply furrowed, warm from the day's accumulated sunshine. He could feel his heartbeat, steady and calm, could feel the slight chill as evening descended, raising goosebumps on his arms, could smell the incense, the earth, the river, the subtle perfume of cherry blossoms mixing with wood smoke. If this was a dream, it was dreaming him as much as he was dreaming it. Kenji found himself walking deeper into the garden, drawn by an instinct he didn't quite understand. The path widened, opening into a small plaza where several routes converged. A stone well stood at the center, its wooden cover weathered and beautiful. Nearby, a simple wooden bench waited beneath another ancient cherry tree, and on this bench sat an elderly man. He wore robes of muted gray and brown, simple but well-made, the kind of clothing that suggested neither poverty nor ostentation, a studied modesty that somehow commanded respect. His hair, mostly gray with streaks of black, was tied back in the traditional style. His hands rested calmly on his knees, and his posture spoke of someone accustomed to patience, to waiting without hurry or agitation. The man was watching the cherry blossoms fall, his expression one of deep, quiet contentment. As Kenji approached, uncertain whether to speak or pass by in silence, the man's gaze shifted to him. His eyes were dark and clear, holding neither surprise nor judgment, only a gentle, knowing awareness that made Kenji feel simultaneously visible and accepted. For a long moment, neither spoke. The evening continued its soft descent around them. Lanterns swayed on their posts. Somewhere distant, a bell rang, deep and resonant, marking the hour in a way that modern clocks never did. Then the man smiled, just slightly, a barely perceptible warming of his features. "You have traveled far," he said, and his voice was calm, measured, carrying the weight of someone who chose words carefully and meant them completely. The old dialect flowed naturally from him, each syllable placed with precision. Not in distance, perhaps, but far nonetheless. Kenji felt his breath catch. Something about the man's presence, the quality of his attention, the way he occupied space without demanding it, all of it suggested someone of significance. Someone who had learned, over a long life, exactly who he was and what he valued. I'm not sure where I am," Kenji admitted, and was surprised to find his own voice adopting the older speech patterns more fully now, as if the language of this place was teaching his tongue how to move. "No." The man's smile deepened almost imperceptibly. "You are in a garden, beneath cherry trees, at the ending of one thing and the beginning of another." He gestured to the space beside him on the bench, an invitation offered without expectation. That is a place many find themselves, though few recognize it while they are there. Kenji hesitated, then moved forward and sat, leaving a respectful distance between them. The wooden bench was smooth beneath him, worn by countless other people seeking rest in this exact spot. His graduation scroll felt strange in his hands, paper and ceremony from a world that suddenly seemed very far away, though he'd left it only moments ago. Or had it been moments? Time felt uncertain here, elastic, moving to rhythms he didn't yet understand. "Are you?" Kenji began, then paused, unsure how to frame the question. The man waited unhurried, his gaze returning to the falling petals. "Are you real?" The question hung in the air between them. The man considered it seriously, as if it deserved serious thought. "That depends," he said finally, "on what you mean by real. I am here. You are here. The cherry blossoms fall and we watch them together. Is that not real enough?" A petal landed on the man's shoulder, and he observed it with the same calm attention he'd given to Kenji's question, as if the falling of a single cherry blossom contained all the wisdom one might need. "I suppose," the man continued, his voice quiet but clear, "you might also wonder who I am. That is often how these conversations begin, with questions of identity and certainty." He turned to look at Kenji more directly, and there was something in his gaze that felt ancient and patient, like stone shaped by centuries of flowing water. "My name would mean little to you now. Names are merely sounds we use to call to one another. What matters more, I think, is why you have come to this garden. Why you sleep beneath these particular trees. Why your heart carries questions it has not yet learned to ask aloud." Kenji found himself turning toward this mysterious figure more fully, drawn by the gentle authority in his voice, the sense that this person understood things that Kenji had only begun to sense, about time, about purpose, about the space between what we plan and what unfolds. "Who are you?" Kenji asked, the question emerging soft but clear in the evening air. The man rose from the bench with an ease that belied his years, and gestured toward a path that wound deeper into the garden. "Walk with me," he said, and it was both invitation and gentle instruction. "The evening grows cool, and there is a place where we might speak more comfortably." Kenji stood and followed, his modern sneakers quiet on the gravel path. They walked in companionable silence through the transformed landscape, past clusters of cherry trees whose blossoms glowed almost luminous in the fading light. The path curved and climbed slightly, revealing stone steps worn smooth by generations of footsteps. At the top of the rise, the garden opened into a private enclosure, a small courtyard sheltered by tall wooden fences weathered to silver gray. A modest pavilion stood at its center, its roof tiles dark against the deepening sky. Paper screens, delicate as breath, enclosed three sides while the fourth remained open to the garden view. Inside, a few simple cushions rested on tatami mats, and a low table held a ceramic bowl of water in which floated three perfect cherry blossoms. They removed their footwear at the entrance, Kenji's sneakers looking impossibly out of place beside the man's simple sandals, and stepped up onto the smooth tatami. The mats smelled of dried grass and sunlight, familiar and ancient all at once. "Sit," the man said, settling onto one of the cushions with practiced grace. "Be at ease." Kenji lowered himself onto the opposite cushion, less gracefully, his modern joints unaccustomed to sitting this way. The graduation scroll rested beside him, a small bridge between worlds. Through the open side of the pavilion, he could see the garden spreading below, cherry trees fading into twilight, and beyond them, the distant roof lines of Edo's wooden buildings. The man was quiet for a long moment, watching the last light drain from the sky. When he finally spoke, his voice carried the same measured calm it had before, but now it seemed to fill the small space with warmth. "I am Tokugawa Ieyasu," he said simply, as if offering his name was no different than commenting on the weather. "Though I suspect that means something different to you than it does to those who live in this time." Kenji's breath caught. Tokugawa Ieyasu, the founder of the Edo shogunate, the man who unified Japan after centuries of warfare, one of the most significant figures in Japanese history, sitting across from him in a garden pavilion, watching cherry blossoms fall. I know who you are," Kenji managed, his voice barely above a whisper. In my time we learn about you, about everything you accomplished." Ieyasu's expression softened with something that might have been amusement. "Accomplished," he repeated as if tasting the word. "That is a heavy thing to carry, the weight of what others think you have accomplished. Tell me, young scholar, when you study these accomplishments in your time, do they teach you about the decades of uncertainty that came before? The countless mistakes? The nights spent wondering if any choice I made was the right one?" Kenji blinked. No. The books talk about your strategies, your victories, the shogunate you established." "Of course they do." Ieyasu nodded slowly. "History prefers endings to beginnings. It is tidier that way. But you and we sit here in the middle of things, don't we? You at the start of your adult path, I in the middle years of mine, and both of us wondering if we are walking in the right direction." A breeze moved through the pavilion, carrying the scent of cherry blossoms and distant wood smoke. One of the paper screens rustled softly, a sound like gentle breathing. "You carry something?" Ieyasu observed, gesturing to the scroll. "A mark of completion, yes? You have finished a great work of learning." "Graduation," Kenji explained. "From university. 4 years of study." "4 years," Ieyasu repeated. "That is no small thing. And yet you seem uncertain about what you have earned." It wasn't a question, but Kenji answered anyway. "I'm grateful. I worked hard. But now..." He paused, surprised by how easily the words came in this timeless place, speaking to this man who should have been impossible. "Now I don't know what comes next. I have dreams. I want to travel, to write, to uncover stories from the past and share them. But everyone tells me to choose one path, to specialize, to be practical. And I'm afraid that if I choose wrong, I'll waste everything. All that time, all that effort." "Ah," Ieyasu said softly, "the fear of the wrong path." He reached forward and adjusted one of the floating cherry blossoms in the bowl, his movements slow and deliberate. The water rippled outward in perfect circles, catching what little light remained. "When I was young," Ieyasu said, "younger than you are now, I was a hostage. Do you know this part of my story?" Kenji nodded. "You were held by the Imagawa clan. For years." "For years," Ieyasu confirmed. "From the age of 6 until I was nearly grown. A child kept as insurance for my family's loyalty. Trapped in a place that was not my home. Unable to act. Unable to choose my own direction. Every day I wondered, was I being prepared for leadership? Or was I simply being kept from it? Should I study warfare or poetry? Strategy or ceremony? Every choice felt enormous because I could not see what any of them would lead to." He paused, his gaze distant, as if looking back across the decades to that captive boy. "I thought, like you think now, that there was a single correct path. That if I could only see it clearly enough, recognize it certainly enough, I could step onto it and be saved from all my doubts. But that is not how paths work, is it? We cannot see them before we walk them. They appear beneath our feet, one step at a time, built from all the small choices we barely notice making." Kenji felt something loosen in his chest, some tight knot of anxiety he hadn't fully acknowledged until now. "But how did you know which steps to take?" Ieyasu smiled, and there was genuine warmth in it, and something else, a recognition of shared confusion, of common humanity. "I didn't. I took the steps that seemed possible. Then I took the next ones. Some led to failure. Many led to places I hadn't intended. But each one taught me something about who I was and what I valued. That, more than any grand strategy, is what shaped the path I eventually walked." A lantern flickered to life somewhere in the garden below. Then another. Slowly, points of warm light began to dot the growing darkness, like earthbound stars. "You speak of wasting time," Ieyasu continued, his voice gentle but firm, "as if there is some cosmic accountant keeping track of your days, judging whether you spent them correctly. But time is not something we spend, young friend. It is something we inhabit. And we cannot waste it any more than a tree can waste the seasons it lives through." "But what if I choose wrong?" Kenji asked, and heard the vulnerability in his own voice. "What if I pursue these dreams and fail? What if I look back in 10 years and realize I should have been more practical, more focused? Then you will know that about yourself," Ieyasu said simply. "And that knowledge, too, will be valuable. You fear failure, but I will tell you a secret. He leaned forward slightly, his eyes catching the last light. Failure is simply another form of information. It tells you where the edges of things are, where your assumptions were wrong, what needs to be adjusted. The men who never fail are not the wise ones. They are the ones who never risked enough to learn anything new. The evening had deepened to near darkness now, the sky a gradient of deep purple and indigo. Stars were beginning to appear, faint and tentative. The lanterns in the garden glowed more brightly by contrast, creating small pools of warmth against the cool night. "I see you carry two paths inside you," Ieyasu observed. "Journalism and archaeology, the present and the past. And people tell you these cannot be walked together. They say I need to focus. Choose one." Ieyasu was quiet for a moment, considering. "When I was held hostage, I studied many things: sword work and poetry, strategy and tea ceremony, warfare and music. People said these skills contradicted each other, that a warrior should not bother with poetry, that a leader should not waste time on ceremony. But I found that each discipline taught me something the others could not. The patience of tea ceremony informed my military strategy. The precision of sword work sharpened my poetry. Nothing was wasted, everything connected, though I could not see how at the time." He gestured toward the garden, where cherry blossoms continued their slow, eternal falling. "Look at these trees. They bloom once a year briefly. The rest of the time, they simply grow. Roots deepening, branches extending, strength accumulating in ways no one can see. Are those other seasons wasted? No, they are necessary. The blossoms would not exist without them." Kenji found himself watching the petals drift through the lantern light, pink and white against the darkness. Each one fell at its own pace, following its own path to the ground, and somehow they all looked right, all looked inevitable. "You want certainty," Ieyasu said gently. "You want to know that the path you choose will lead somewhere good. But certainty is not given to us at the beginning. It is something we build slowly through the act of walking. And even then, it is not the certainty of outcomes. It is the certainty of who we are and what we value." "How do I build that?" Kenji asked. "That certainty? By walking," Ieyasu replied. "By trying. By failing and trying again. By paying attention to what draws your interest and what drains your spirit. By being patient with yourself as you learn. You have just completed 4 years of dedicated study. That shows you are capable of patience, of sustained effort. Now you must practice a different kind of patience. The patience of not knowing. The patience of becoming." He reached into his robe and withdrew something small. A smooth stone, dark and oval, worn by water. He placed it on the table between them. "I keep this to remind myself of something I often forget," Ieyasu said. "This stone came from a river. Every day water moved over it, and every day it changed. So slowly that no one watching could see it happen. But over years, over centuries, the sharp edges became smooth. The rough surfaces became polished. The water was patient. The stone was patient. And eventually, beauty emerged." Kenji stared at the stone, its surface catching the dim light. "You are like this stone," Ieyasu continued, "and your life is the river. You cannot rush the smoothing. You cannot skip to the end and emerge already polished. You must simply be in the water, day by day, allowing the work to happen. That is not passivity. It is the most active kind of patience there is, choosing daily to remain in the current, choosing to let the experience shape you. The words settled into Kenji like seeds into soil, finding purchase in some deep place he hadn't known was waiting for them. "But what if I'm too slow?" he asked quietly. "What if everyone else is moving faster, achieving more, while I'm just waiting to be shaped?" Iyasu's smile was kind, understanding. "There is no everyone else. There is only you and the specific life you are living, with its specific challenges and opportunities. I spent decades building alliances, learning from mistakes, watching younger, more impetuous men rush past me toward quick victories. Some of them succeeded, many failed. I learned to move at my own pace, not because I was wise, but because I had no choice. My circumstances demanded patience whether I liked it or not. And in that forced slowness, I discovered something important." He paused, letting the silence stretch, letting the evening deepen around them. "I discovered that the race everyone seems to be running is an illusion. There is no finish line where we all arrive and compare our accomplishments. There is only the quality of the journey itself, how much attention we paid, how much we learned, how well we treated ourselves and others along the way. Speed accomplishes nothing if you arrive somewhere you never wanted to be." Kenji felt tears prick at the corners of his eyes, surprising him. He hadn't realized how heavy the weight had become, the weight of expectations, of comparison, of feeling simultaneously rushed and paralyzed. "It's hard," he admitted, "being at the beginning, not knowing if I'll be good enough." "Yes," Ieyasu agreed simply. "It is hard, and it remains hard for a long time. But here is something else I have learned." His voice softened even further, taking on the quality of a confidence shared between old friends. "The uncertainty never fully leaves. Even now, in this middle part of my life, I wake some mornings unsure if the choices I'm making are wise. The difference is that I have learned to act despite the uncertainty. Not because I have overcome it, but because I understand that certainty is not required for action. Clarity emerges through doing, not before it." The night had fully arrived now. The garden was a tapestry of shadows and lantern light, cherry trees reduced to dark silhouettes against the star-scattered sky. The air had cooled significantly, carrying the clean scent of evening and growing things. Ieyasu stood slowly, and Kenji rose with him, his legs stiff from sitting. They moved to the open edge of the pavilion, looking out over the garden and the distant lights of Edo beyond. "You asked me how to know which steps to take," Ieyasu said, his voice almost a murmur now, intimate and warm. "I will tell you what I have learned, though it is simpler than you might wish. Take the steps that feel true to who you are in this moment. Not who you think you should be, not who others expect you to become. Who you are, now, with all your contradictions and uncertainties." He turned to face Kenji, and in the dim light, his expression held nothing but gentle acceptance. "Your dreams of traveling, of writing, of uncovering old stories, those are not impractical. They are signals from your deepest self, telling you what kinds of experiences will teach you what you need to learn. Trust them, even if the path is slow, even if it looks nothing like what you imagined, even if you fail many times before you begin to succeed." A cherry blossom drifted into the pavilion, caught on the night breeze, and landed between them on the tatami. They both watched it settle, this small, perfect thing that had traveled so far just to rest for a moment in this exact spot. "Remember this," Ieyasu said, and his voice carried a weight of finality, as if he knew their time was ending. "The seed does not become a tree in a single day. The warrior does not master the sword in a single year. And a life, a true life, one that means something, is not built in a single moment of choice. It is built slowly, deliberately, through thousands of small decisions to keep walking, keep trying, keep paying attention to what feels true. He placed a hand briefly on Kenji's shoulder, a gesture of blessing or farewell or both. "You will be uncertain many times in the years ahead," Ieyasu said quietly. "You will doubt yourself. You will compare your progress to others and find yourself lacking. When that happens, remember this garden. Remember that even the mightiest achievements begin with a single seed in dark soil, growing in ways no one can see. Trust the growing. Trust the darkness. Trust the slow work of becoming who you are meant to be." Kenji wanted to respond, to thank this impossible figure for these words he hadn't known he needed, but his throat had tightened with emotion. He managed a bow, deep and sincere, holding it as his grandmother had taught him, a gesture of profound respect and gratitude. When he straightened, Ieyasu was smiling, and in that smile was all the understanding one human could offer another across the centuries. "Go now," Ieyasu said gently. "Return to your time, but carry this with you." He gestured to the garden, the lanterns, the falling blossoms, and somehow Kenji understood he meant all of it. The conversation, the patience, the permission to be uncertain and to walk anyway. "Walk slowly, young friend," Ieyasu said, his final words barely louder than the wind. "Walk slowly and pay attention. That is the only wisdom I have to offer. That and this." He paused, and his voice became soft as falling cherry blossoms. "The path you seek is not ahead of you, waiting to be found. It appears beneath your feet as you walk. Trust each step. The destination will take care of itself." The lantern nearest the pavilion flickered once, twice, and suddenly the light seemed to grow brighter, or perhaps everything else was growing dimmer. Kenji blinked, and the edges of the scene began to blur like watercolor in rain. Ieyasu's figure remained steady for a moment longer, solid and real, and then even he began to fade, his outlines softening into the gathering darkness. The garden tilted, or perhaps Kenji tilted, the world becoming fluid and uncertain. The last thing he saw clearly was Ieyasu's face, calm and accepting, watching him go with the same patient attention he'd given to everything else, as if departures were no more tragic than falling blossoms, just another natural part of the way things move through time. Then the darkness became complete, soft and enfolding, and Kenji felt himself falling backward through layers of sleep and consciousness, through the membrane between times, carried on a current of cherry petals and ancient wisdom back toward the world he'd left behind. The last sound he heard was Ieyasu's voice, distant as memory, warm as firelight. "Walk slowly, pay attention, trust the path that appears beneath your feet." And then silence, and then the gentle sound of modern traffic, growing louder, and then Kenji opened his eyes to the familiar hum of Tokyo at evening. The sound came gradually, layering itself back into his awareness. The distant whoosh of traffic along the expressway, the rhythmic chime of a crossing signal, the faint electronic melody of a convenience store door opening somewhere beyond the park's edge. The city's voice, constant and varied, welcoming him back to the world he knew. He was lying beneath the cherry tree, just as he had been. The bark pressed against his back in the same way. The air held the same cool promise of evening. But something had shifted. Some internal weight had lightened, leaving him feeling strangely buoyant, as if he'd set down a burden he'd been carrying so long he'd forgotten it was there. Cherry petals rested on his coat, accumulated in soft pink drifts across his lap and shoulders. He brushed them gently, watching them tumble and scatter, and found himself smiling at their lightness, their willingness to be moved by the smallest breath of wind. Cherry petals rested on his coat, accumulated in soft pink drifts across his lap and shoulders. He brushed them gently, watching them tumble and scatter, and found himself smiling at their lightness, their willingness to be moved by the smallest breath of wind. Had it been a dream? Kenji sat up slowly, his body stiff from however long he'd been lying there. The park around him was exactly as it should be, the modern pathways, the decorative street lamps beginning to glow in the gathering dusk, the distant skyline of glass and steel catching the last rays of sunlight. No wooden posts with paper lanterns. No gravel paths leading to impossible gardens. No elderly man in simple robes speaking words that seemed to hold centuries of understanding. And yet the words remained, clear and present in his mind, as vivid as if they'd been spoken moments ago. The path you seek is not ahead of you, waiting to be found. It appears beneath your feet as you walk. The voice that had spoken them, calm, measured, infinitely patient, still seemed to echo in the quiet spaces of his thoughts. Kenji touched his shoulder where Ieyasu's hand had rested, that brief gesture of blessing. He felt nothing but his own jacket, the ordinary fabric of his ordinary life. But the warmth of that touch lingered somehow, a sense memory that defied explanation. Dream or vision or something his exhausted mind had conjured from stress and uncertainty. It didn't matter. Not really. What mattered was how he felt now, sitting in this park as evening descended, surrounded by falling cherry blossoms and the gentle soundtrack of his own time. He felt calmer, the frantic edge of anxiety that had been with him all day, through the graduation ceremony, through the photographs and congratulations, through the long walk to this park, had softened into something manageable. Not gone, but no longer overwhelming, as if someone had turned down the volume on his worries, making room for other things, quieter things, truer things. A breeze moved through the cherry branches, and a fresh cascade of petals spiraled down. Kenji watched them fall, remembering Ieyasu's words about the tree's seasons, how the invisible growing was no less important than the beautiful blooming. How nothing was wasted, how patience was not passivity but an active choosing to remain in the current, letting experience shape you like water shapes stone. Walk slowly, pay attention. Simple advice, almost too simple, and yet Kenji felt it settling into him like something he'd always known but had forgotten, something his own deepest self recognized as true. He didn't need to have everything figured out right now. Didn't need to choose the perfect path, make the flawless decision, chart the optimal course. He just needed to take the next step, and then the next one, paying attention to what felt true, trusting that clarity would emerge through doing, not before it. The pressure he'd been feeling, to succeed immediately, to justify his choices, to prove himself worthy of the education he'd received. It hadn't disappeared entirely, but it had loosened its grip. He could breathe around it now, could see it for what it was, fear wearing the mask of practicality. And beneath that fear, something else was stirring, something quieter but more substantial, a small, steady sense of direction. Not a complete map, but a compass, an internal knowing about what drew his interest and what drained his spirit. The stories he wanted to tell, the connections he wanted to make between past and present, the way his heart quickened when he thought about traveling to ancient sites, standing where others had stood centuries ago, trying to understand how they'd lived and what they'd valued. Maybe it would work out, maybe it wouldn't, maybe he'd succeed in ways he couldn't yet imagine, or maybe he'd fail and have to adjust and try something else. But that was all right. That was just the path appearing beneath his feet, one step at a time, built from all the small choices he barely noticed making. Kenji stood, brushing more petals from his clothes. His legs felt steadier than they had before. The world felt steadier, or perhaps he felt steadier within it. More grounded, more present, more willing to be exactly where he was instead of anxiously projecting himself into a dozen imagined futures. He looked up through the cherry branches at the darkening sky. A few early stars were visible, faint points of light persisting against the city's glow. The moon was rising, thin and elegant, a silver curve above the eastern horizon. Somewhere in this same city, other people were facing their own uncertainties, their own new beginnings. Other graduates wondering what came next, other dreamers questioning their paths. And somewhere in memory, in history, in the strange space between sleeping and waking, an old warrior sat in a garden, watching cherry blossoms fall, offering quiet wisdom to anyone patient enough to listen. Trust the path that appears beneath your feet. Kenji picked up his backpack, slinging it over one shoulder, the graduation scroll he held carefully in his other hand, treating it with the respect it deserved, not as a burden of expectation, but as a reminder of what he'd already accomplished. 4 years of dedicated study, for years of not giving up, even when the path seemed unclear. If he could do that, he could do this, whatever this turned out to be. He began walking toward the park's exit, his footsteps quiet on the paved path. Cherry petals continued to fall around him, and he found himself noticing each one, the way they caught the lamplight, the particular curve of their descent, the soft sound they made when they touched the ground. Paying attention, being present, not rushing toward the next thing, but inhabiting this moment fully, letting it teach him what it had to teach. The city opened before him as he left the park. Buildings and lights and the eternal flow of people moving through their evening routines felt less overwhelming now, less like a maze he might get lost in, and more like a landscape he was learning to navigate, one careful step at a time. He would go home, he would rest, and tomorrow he would take another step. Maybe it would be sending out applications. Maybe it would be reaching out to potential mentors. Maybe it would be something he hadn't even thought of yet, some opportunity that would only become visible once he started moving. But whatever it was, he would approach it with the patience he'd learned, or remembered, beneath the cherry trees, with the understanding that becoming takes time, that uncertainty is not a failing but a natural part of every beginning, that the path reveals itself to those who have the courage to walk without seeing the whole road ahead. Kenji paused at the park's edge and looked back one last time. The cherry tree where he'd slept stood dark against the evening sky, its branches swaying gently in the breeze. Petals still fell, would keep falling through the night and into tomorrow, each one taking its own time, following its own path to the ground. He raised his hand in a small gesture of farewell, to the tree, to the dream, to the impossible conversation that had somehow become the most real thing that had happened to him all day. Then he turned toward home, toward whatever came next, carrying inside him a new kind of certainty. Not the certainty of outcomes, but the certainty of who he was and what he valued. That would be enough. That would be more than enough. It would be everything. The cherry blossoms continued their ancient dance, falling between worlds, connecting past and present in the soft spaces where dreams take root. And in the morning, they would still be falling, patient and beautiful, reminding anyone who paused to notice that all great things begin with a single seed, buried in darkness, growing in ways no one can see, until suddenly, impossibly, they bloom. There are cherry blossoms still falling somewhere between then and now, carrying whispers across time. The dream fades, but its lessons remain. Small seeds planted in quiet soil, waiting to grow in ways we cannot yet see. Rest now. The journey continues tomorrow, in another place, another time, another gentle dream. Until then, may you walk slowly, and may your path appear softly beneath your feet. Sleep well, traveler.